Fantastic. Thank you very much. Welcome, everybody, to this education session with Maureen Bachman on Break Your Badness, Elevate Your Leadership. You may know Maureen from her time at the Toastmasters bookstore in these conferences. So she's a very familiar face, but she has a great story to tell. As your meeting moderator, I will introduce the presenter, establish the guidelines, time the presentation, and ask for your evaluation of the presentation towards the ends of the session. To keep this meeting on time, let me go over the guidelines. During the presentation, your audio will be initially muted, but the chat box is open to participants for responses when the presenter asks for your input. You can also chat with the host or co-host in the meeting room for any technical issues. There will be time for Q&A at the end of the session, so please write down your questions. On the participants list, raise your hand so we can mute and unmute you during the Q&A to get you your questions answered. Recording consent. Your continued attendance in this educational session will be deemed as implied consent to video and audio recording. Without further delay, let's have a warm welcome for our presenter, Maureen Bachman, with Break Your Bias, Elevate Your Leadership.
Thank you, Michael. I appreciate it. Good morning, everybody. Happy Saturday. If you are in the Cleveland area, it is a beautiful day outside. I would like to ask for this session if you could turn off your videos just for bandwidth, but we are going to leave the chat open. I know that might be a little bit different than most educational sessions, but today we are going to learn together. How to break your bias and elevate your leadership. Here's today's agenda. We're going to talk about hidden bias. What is it? Who has it? And how do we break it? And we're also going to talk about inclusive leadership. That requires intentional action. And we're going to talk about elevating our leadership to the next level. I have some ground rules, and I like to do this for all of my sessions regarding diversity and inclusion. This really needs to be a safe space. So any questions you have, any comments you have, completely acceptable. This is a judgment-free zone. Listen to understand when someone is talking, or when someone puts a comment, or when I'm talking. We're going to assume positive intent. There are always times that we say the wrong thing and we don't realize that we're saying the wrong thing. So assume positive intent with what someone is saying, that they do not mean any harm. And be kind. We are all learning in this allyship journey. So all of these ground rules apply, including in the chat. And we'll also stop recording before the Q&A session, just so everyone can speak freely. These types of conversations can be uncomfortable to have, and I want to make you all as comfortable as possible. So are you guys ready to get comfortable with the uncomfortable? Yes. Awesome. So in the chat, or if you're comfortable, you can unmute. I want to ask you, what can you tell me about this person? Just based on the picture. And I'll wait. Rebel. I've got Rebel in the chat. She looks friendly. Oh, shucks. Sorry. Creative. When you see this picture, do you immediately make some assumptions? Put your hand up or say yes in the chat for me. It's okay if it's a little uncomfortable. What do you think this person does for a living? If you had to guess. Artist?
I was just going to say the same thing.
You were going to say the same thing? Thank you. Doctor? Hospitality? She certainly is self-confident to have those tattoos, right? Musician? This is Marisa DiMattia. She is an attorney in New York City. I'm not sure if she rides a bike, Stravanti. She runs needle.com in her spare time, but she's actually an attorney by day. Maybe not what you expected, right? So why is that? What is hidden bias? Does anyone have an idea? Or is that why you're here today? Hidden bias. It's attitudes or stereotype bias we have but do not realize. Thank you. Attitudes or stereotypes that affect our understanding, our actions, and decisions in an unconscious way based on our unique experiences. We're all different. We've all been through different things. So we all have a different perspective, or a lens, as some people call it. This is also referred to as implicit or unconscious bias. And there are many different types. So I think initially, the ones that everyone thinks of are skin color, gender, age, things like that, right? But also height and weight, introversion and extroversion, marital status, disability status, accents, where someone attended college. Clothing, yes, what types of clothing, what types of hobbies they have, or extracurricular activities. So now we're going to watch a short video about blind spots from PricewaterhouseCoopers. Dan, if you could share that.
Are you seriously considering her as a candidate?
Just don't trust her.
She's a woman.
She's a woman.
This is a man's
She's
job.
clearly not educated.
Really not. Does she even speak English?
That's not me. I'm not like that. You call it an honest mistake. Science calls it a blind spot. Our unconscious mind is a mysterious and powerful thing. It makes 90% of our decisions without us even knowing it. Our brains are overloaded with 11 million pieces of information every second. Yet we can only process about 40 of them. So we're wired to make cognitive shortcuts, using past experiences to make assumptions. And you know what happens when we assume? Our unconscious mind can put us on autopilot, determining where we sit, who we eat lunch with, who we turn to for advice, and who we choose to offer a helping hand. Living our lives with blind spots can put us in a tunnel. Same point of view, same decisions, same outcomes. We can find ourselves trapped in the land of snap judgments and misconceptions. We've all been on both the giving and receiving end of blind spots. Think about it. Who's talented? Who's able? Who can I trust? Who belongs? We've all been there. Blind spots are part of the human condition. Our choices have consequences for us and the people we interact with. By accepting that blind spots exist, we can stop. Imagine what possibilities exist if we could do it all over again. different perspectives, inclusive relationships, diverse networks, better outcomes, seeing people for who they really are. People like you with unlimited potential. We all have blind spots. Once you accept that you have them, you can choose to do something about it. It's time to check your blind spots and focus on what's possible.
Thank you very much. So blind spots, right? Our brains are hardwired to make assumptions, which can sometimes be off base. So here's the question I have for everybody. Do we have hidden bias? If you could put your answer in the chat. Yes, even if we are convinced we don't. Absolutely. We all do based on experience we have gone through. Absolutely. Getting lots of yes comments here. So are you guys good? We can just move on. So yes, we all have it. We have 11 million pieces of information coming at us every second. We have to take shortcuts to survive, right? We can only process 40. So we have to take those shortcuts. That's a lot of information. The first time I heard that number, I was like, 11 million? It's a big number. How often do you guys think hidden bias affects our decision making? How often does it impact us? Throw some numbers out there. You can unmute or put it in the chat. Every day? Yeah, definitely every day. Anyone want to venture for a number? It's okay if you're wrong. I was wrong. Every time we encounter something different, probably many times a day without even realizing, maybe 50% of the time. Does anyone think anything differently? All right, get ready. 80%. Our hidden bias impacts our decision making up to 95% of the time. It influences it. Does that make us a bad person? No. No. Good. It's okay to have hidden bias. Like I said, all that information, our brains have to take shortcuts just to survive, right? So it doesn't make us a bad person. We all have it. We need to work to recognize it and work to overcome it. What's bad is not trying to understand what your unconscious biases are. Has anyone here ever made a mistake and said something wrong at some point in their life? Probably, right? Oh, yes. I'll give an example from myself where thankfully I was around people who treated me with kindness to correct me. I do not have any military members in my immediate family. I don't know a lot about the military experience or the family's a military family experience. I had a friend who had been in the military as an officer, her and her husband, and they had 2 kids. And I knew a lot about her experience in the military, living in officers' quarters, the cost at the stores on base, and how they were able to save up a lot of money because of what they were making. Years later, I was having a conversation with someone, and they were talking about a military family who was struggling financially. And I didn't understand how this person was struggling financially. And I said, well, they make a ton of money. And this person went, what? And I said, well, they make a ton of money, right? They don't have the same cost of living that we do. They said, no. But they, with kindness, let me know that my bias was incorrect. But they assumed positive intent, right? Back to that ground rule. They assumed positive intent. They knew that I did not mean anything bad by it. So how do we break it? Can we eliminate it? No. Can we challenge it? Can we manage it? Yes. So to help manage our biases, we need to recognize blind spots in ourselves and others. We need to recognize and see those things as they happen. We need to be intentional with our actions. That's really important. This does not come easy. You have to put the work in. Seek out new opinions and perspectives. Be proactive about recognizing people's different capabilities. And work to be more inclusive. Consider who might consistently feel like an outsider. Take steps to actively address that. Seek out your own feedback on your behaviors. So we're going to stop and think. Are you about to make a big decision? Stop and think. Are you about to call your usual people who you always go to for advice? Stop and think. Recognize the red flags. Consider other options that might be there. Maybe I want to get a different perspective on this. Maybe we're stuck in a cycle of using the same advisors. The same people always respond to need opinions on social media. So stop and think, where can I get a different perspective? Inclusive leadership. How many people here have ever felt excluded? Raise your hands. If that option is there. Do we have yeses? Thank you. How did it feel to be excluded or to feel excluded? Did it feel good? No, it doesn't feel good at all. So inclusive leadership means that leaders commit to ensuring all of their team members or the people around them feel treated equitably. They have a sense of belonging and value, and they have resources and support for them so that they can achieve their full potential. And that's the case when you're trying to be inclusive in anything you do, not just as a leader. So why is it important? It's not just a nice thing to have on teams, right? Research shows that it directly enhances performance. Excuse me. Teams with inclusive leaders are 17% more likely to report that they are high performing as a team. They're 20% more likely to say they make high quality decisions, and 29% more likely to report behaving collaboratively. Now, there's been a lot of research done on this topic. And there was an analysis done by the Inclusive Leadership Assessments group. And they said what the most important inclusive leader trait is. And boy, I wish it was easier. A leader's awareness of personal and organizational biases combined with humility and empathy. Being able to say, I don't know. I have a different lens than you. I have a different perspective than you. I don't know about that topic. I need to get more information. People who respect and appreciate and say that their leaders are inclusive, that's the trait that they want them to have. And if you didn't know, in 2021, Fortune 500 is going to include diversity and inclusion rankings in their list. What we did before is not going to get us where we need to go. It's going to require change. Corporations all over the country, all over the world, have a greater focus on diversity and inclusion because they see the positive results of it. So let's talk about how do we elevate our leadership. All right, I got a question for everybody. I told you it was interactive. Have you ever had a manager who sounded very confident with their incorrect information because they didn't want to sound, quote unquote, dumb? I think we all have, right? Yeah. Did you respect them less? Did it maybe impact your view of them?
Yes.
Yes. Sometimes it made you doubt yourself. Man, you and me both. I would double check and triple check and go back and check my resources. I'm pretty sure that that was wrong. Now, have you ever had a manager who stated they didn't know, but they would find out?
Yes.
Yes. You are that person. Did you respect that leader more? Did you respect that person more? Excuse me. Yeah. I don't think there's a single person who can say they've not had a good boss or not had a bad boss. So to elevate our leadership, we need to be intentional with our actions. I know I said that before, but it's super important. This requires active work, active thought, being intentional. You want to showcase individual strengths. Seek out differences. Invite different people to the table, right? Ask for input from others. And you want to challenge people to try new things. And you can check your impact. Look for signals. So how does it impact us? Can we relate this to Toastmasters? Has anyone been voluntold before? I know I have, especially in Toastmasters, right? So people volunteer for things that they're comfortable with. And sometimes we volunteer people into roles. Do we challenge them? I think everyone has heard someone in their club say, I don't like being grammarian because I get too caught up in what people are saying and I forget to count. And we challenge them to be the grammarian, to work on that skill. That's how we include them. How many people here like being evaluated by the same person every time you give a speech? I'm not seeing any hands or yeses.
We got 2 no's.
Got 2
No.
no's and a no way
No.
and a no. Yeah. Why is that? We like getting different perspective, right? We need different points of view, right? I want variety. Absolutely. So we seek it out a lot in Toastmasters. We do a lot of things that are inclusive in Toastmasters. We encourage people to learn new skills and tasks, challenge themselves, try a different path than they would be comfortable with. We're all here to be better leaders, better speakers, better communicators, and better humans. Now, I want you to take a step back and I want you to think about this presentation today. Was it inclusive and why? You can unmute or you can put it in the chat. This is where I welcome open feedback, and it is a safe space.
Maureen, this is Mrinalini. I think you are inclusive because you're asking for our opinions and our thoughts.
Yeah.
Yes.
Thank you. I want you to think of it this way too. I've got a private, yes, because your points were all things everyone in this room can relate to. Yeah. We all have different perspectives, right? We all learn differently. One of the things that I made sure to do when I was creating this presentation, I wanted visual aids for those of you who learn better visually. I wanted auditory aids, a video for those of you who hear and learn through hearing better. And we all know there's people who really like charts and graphs and numbers. So that's why I wanted to include some statistics so that I could reach everyone in my audience that way. We can build this and integrate being inclusive into everything we do. So break your bias and elevate your leadership. Recognize and challenge it. Remember, we all have it. Recognize and challenge it. When we're about to make a decision or ask for opinions, what are we going to do? Stop and think. That's right. We need to be intentional with our actions. And we need to continue working to improve. It can be easy to reject the results of the tests as not me. Excuse me, when you first encounter them. But that's the easy path, right? So we got to ask, where does this come from? What does it mean? Why do I have this bias? That's the harder task. And recognizing that the problem is in many others as well as in ourselves should motivate us all to try and both understand and to act. To be a better leader, we need to be inclusive. What we've always done will not bring us the same results, will not bring us better results. And that's in anything we do. With Toastmasters, at your workplace, and in your personal lives.
Hey, Mo, we have a chat you might have missed that Yvonne said you also included a personal story as personal. It was inclusive.
Thank you. Yes, I had to include a personal story. I had to let you guys know that I'm human too, and I make mistakes, and it's okay. I've got other stories too. We can talk after. So I want to share some additional tools for you. Harvard has an implicit bias test. It's online. It's going to take some time. not hours, probably about a half hour to complete the full test. And Dan, if you could share the link to the implicit bias test, excuse me, so you can kind of do a self-assessment on where is your implicit bias? Where do you stand? And there are actually things about healthcare in there, about visual perspectives, and you can kind of focus on the things where you might not even realize you have some biases. There's also an article that Dan has linked in here from the Harvard Business Review, Key to Inclusive Leadership. This kind of information and this kind of discussion can be really tough. It can be challenging. It can be uncomfortable. It can be uncomfortable to do that work and dig inside and look inside yourself and figure it out. There are so many resources available to you. Google search. You can look anywhere. There are news articles. There are institutions and organizations that strictly focus on being inclusive, eliminating biases, self-assessments. There are books upon books upon books. There are documentaries and movies. So I encourage you to reach out, do some work, and figure out, where are my biases? How can I break those? Stop and think. There are also a couple of books here that I referenced, if you're interested in reading those, that are referenced in the Harvard Business Review article that I linked in here as well. I want to thank you all for joining me today and working to become better humans. I feel that that's my purpose in life, to help others. And I was really excited to present to this group today. So I'd like to open it up for any questions. We have time. How much time do we have, Michael?
We have 12 more minutes.
Excellent. All right, who has questions? And it's okay if it's uncomfortable or you're not sure if it's okay to ask. It's okay to ask, I promise. Who's been challenged with this type of thing before? Or had to overcome something?
I know I'm your moderator, Mo, but I do have a question.
Sure.
At times, when you're encountered with a situation or a conversation, you might think to ask something perhaps, or a question might float in your mind, but you're unsure or embarrassed perhaps to ask. You don't want to be rude, or you don't want to, sound, make the person uncomfortable. How would you approach that question, or how may you better approach that question so that your intent is clear?
Yeah, so that's a bit of a loaded question, but I like that you asked it. There are ways to do it. The one thing I don't like is to say, I don't want to offend you, but, because I think a lot of people say that because they're trying to say, I don't want to offend you, but it puts the audience kind of on the defensive already. So I would recommend, knowing your audience is super important. You have to know who your audience is. You have to know what their perspective is. And you have to have some people that you can get comfortable getting uncomfortable with. So you have to have your allies in your life that you can ask those questions to. When you're asking a question, stop and think. How can I word this the best way? And saying, I apologize, I'm ignorant to this. I don't know much about this. It's okay. Remember we talked about our managers that were good and bad? The ones who just spouted off an answer, we had less respect for them. But the ones who said, I don't know, but I'll find out, we have more respect for. So you can use that in everyday life as well when you're talking to someone. If you want to ask a question, I'm sorry, this might just be my ignorance. I have said that to people, and it really helps with having that conversation. Hope that helps. Thank you. I also have another question in the chat. How did you become interested in this topic? Oh, Vicky. Oh, I'm sorry, that was a private question. How did I become interested in this topic? It's interesting because I've had to take a step back and go, where did my allyship journey start? I have 4 sisters, and one of them had a traumatic brain injury as a child, and she had to learn to walk, talk, eat, read, all that stuff all over again. And growing up through her rehabilitation, my parents got very involved with the National Head Injury Foundation, and we learned, it was embedded in me from very young, about being inclusive with people with disabilities and what that looks like, and how you have to be proactive, how you have to be intentional to make sure everyone is being inclusive and you're including those people. And I don't know that I realized how broad that impact was until I was older and actually moved out of my house when I went to college, because I now had a whole new group of people in my life with different perspectives and different backgrounds. So to me, that's where my passion lies. Thank you. Do we have any other questions? How are we doing on time?
Don't see any in the chat, and you still have about 8 more minutes. Oh, one just
Okay.
there was a comment that came in from Yvonne. Yes, you were spot on in regard to special needs. Being a special needs parent, she respects that.
Yeah, thank you, Yvonne. I did get another private question. So sometimes certain members serve as officers over and over, because when you ask generally, those who haven't served may be hesitant to try. Ooh, we've all experienced this, right? Then when you call club members to be more inclusive and to invite them to become a club leader, and even then they won't try it. How best do you encourage them to try? I'm going to open it up. I'm going to see if anyone else has a response for this. I have some ideas. Hopefully you learned some today.
Actually, you could ask them. We're all here to help one another, and we're all here to learn. So if you try to run, some of the rest of us will give you help. We can work as a committee.
Yeah, I like that. That was Louise, I believe.
Yes.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, it's one of those things, right? So we're all in this together. We're all working to be better leaders, better communicators, better humans together. None of us can do it on our own. And every single person that's in one of those leadership spots, they've been in it. And they didn't know what they were doing the first time they got in it. I can speak from experience from my past clubs. I had no idea what I was doing initially. But people helped me along the way. So when it comes to how do you encourage them to try, ask them what gets in the way. What's stopping you? What is that barrier for you to try something new and work on it? Being inclusive and encouraging them, being positive, we do a lot of that, right? But let's kind of dig a little deeper and say, what's preventing you from moving forward? What's preventing you from taking that path? What are your concerns so that you can help eliminate those or come up with a plan? So they might have concerns and I don't know if I can do it with the time. Well, let's come up with a plan and let's talk about realistically what this requires. So hopefully that helps. We have probably time for another one. If anybody has anything or even has any comments.
sorry, it's me again, Mo. I do have one quick question. You had provided the Harvard Business Review link. What did you learn from it, from taking that quiz?
From the inclusion self-assessment?
Yeah.
I have taken a few of those over time, and I like to continue to take them so that I can focus on something new, I guess, is the best way to put it. Have I progressed in certain areas? I have some biases. I happen to work for a corporation that has a ton of employee resource groups for different demographics and different types of people. I belong to all of them because one of them is Parent Connection. I don't have kids of my own, but I work with parents. I manage parents. I need to understand what some of their challenges are. Same thing with our military network. I joined that so I could learn more about what military families experience because I'm working with those people. I'm managing those people. So for me, I've learned a lot about where my blind spots are. Thankfully, I have some very kind people in my life that have corrected me along the way and helped me learn and assumed positive intent because of who I am. But I like continuing to take them to see where am I at in my journey now. Because it's continuous. There is no end game. We have to constantly learn and grow, right? Yeah, you're gaining trust from others. If there's one step you can take today to help you on your journey, what is it? We will end on that one. Stop and think. When you're about to do something, when you're about to say something, stop and think. Have I thought about other perspectives? Have I thought about another way to put it? Have I thought about another avenue to take? Stop and think before you speak, before you do, before you act. Have I included everyone? Is everyone going to receive this information the same? Take that extra moment. Again, we all have these hidden biases. Doesn't make us bad people. It's just a fact. Stop and think. Break your bias. I want to thank you all so much for joining me today. Hopefully you learned something. There is a survey that is in the chat. If you could please fill that out, my little evaluation, so I can get feedback. And please be honest. I'm okay. If there's something that was missing, tell me. Because I want to get better for next time. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you very much. Thank you,